Hey guys! How you doing? Don't mind me, I'm just finishing up my workout. 498! 499! 500! Yeah! No, I'm just kidding. I was just doing that to show you the shirt. Hey folks, how you doing? Dave McRae here. There we go. That's what you were waiting for, right? Okay, listen, we actually have some news today that I want to talk about. But before I do, I want to give a quick shout out to the fine folks over at HalloweenDailyNews.com. Now, they don't know me, I don't know them. I believe we follow each other on Twitter, but well, actually, that's not true. We have communicated briefly a couple years ago when they did a little blurb on my fan film Halloween the Night He Came Back, where they, talked about it and they posted the trailer and some still photos, which was great. But outside of that, we haven't really talked. So it's not like I work for them or they're paying me. I just want to let you know that this is a legitimate, genuine endorsement for the fine work they are doing. They are interviewing, and I'm sure there's more to come. They have been doing some fantastic interviews as of late with those involved in the new Halloween film. A couple of weeks ago, they did one with Nick Castle, which was fantastic. I believe last week they did one with Sean Clark, where he talked about how he was basically, the one that got the wheels in motion to bring Nick Castle back on board. And just today, they posted a great interview with James Jude Courtney. And it's really interesting if you haven't checked it out, because there's a lot of new information in there about the context of his role as Michael Myers and Nick Castle's role as Michael Myers. We finally have some perspective on who's really playing Michael Myers here, and what these roles are, because I know a lot of people, myself included, had speculated over the last several months that because James Jude Courtney has experience in a lot of stunt work, that he would maybe primarily be doing most of the stunts, most of the physicality of Michael Myers. And we do know, and we've known for quite some time, and it was reiterated in the interview today with James Jude Courtney, that there's a lot of physicality in this new Halloween film, more so than there was. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say it's more physical than any other Halloween film, but certainly we are led to believe that it is more physical than the original classic from 1978, which is fair enough, because that goes back to sort of what I've been, saying for months now, is that, they're bringing John Carpenter's classic into the 21st century, right? Going back to the mood and the atmosphere and the tension and the slow burn and the suspense. But is it, out of the realm of possibility to think that, yeah, this is probably going to be a little more of a physical film? No, not at all. That makes sense, right? So having said that, we finally have some perspective now on James Jude Courtney's role in this new Halloween film and exactly what Nick Castle's role is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of going over the whole article, because it's a really long article, it's a great article, don't get me wrong, it's a great interview, but it's really, really long. I'm going to jump to the juicy Michael Myers bits for the purposes of this video, okay? Now, I highly recommend that you do go to HalloweenDailyNews.com and check out the interview, because it's worth reading, but that's not why you're here. You're not here to listen to me ramble on about his past and how he got, started in the industry and his love for Halloween and horror movies and how he grew up and all that kind of shit, which is valid, concrete stuff to get to know the man behind the mask, right? But you're here for the Michael Myers juicy stuff. So that's what I'm going to get to. So what I'm going to read to you here is a large portion from about the middle of the interview, or at least a quarter of the way through, where he talks about finally getting the call at the beginning of December of 2017 that, yes, you are going to be playing Michael Myers in this new film. Okay, listen to this. In December, they sent me out to do the life cast of my face, so I went out and met Christopher Nelson for the first time, and we did the life cast. We cast the masks to my face and the other prosthetics, which you will discover during the course of the film. Then in January, I went down to Charleston, South Carolina, and did a week of rehearsal. David called me, referring to David Gordon Green. David called me actually prior to rehearsal, and we talked about the character, and we talked about movement. He said, look, I really see a certain yes, the shape moves a certain way, and Nick Castle was the one that created that iconic sort of presence. But I have this idea that there's a certain cat-like quality to the efficiency and movement. I said, well, oddly enough, David, I have a cat in my lap right now. In fact, I used a cat to design my movement for Der Kindestad. Not quite sure how to pronounce that character name, but I believe it's a character he played in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think cats are the most perfect hunting, killing machines on the planet. And the beauty of it is we don't judge a cat for what a cat does. A cat does what a cat does because it's a cat. So I sort of carried that movement and the non-judgmental approach to the way I moved as the shape, which I learned from my cat, Parzival. He's a little Grail Knight. He's a badass. And David was also really sensitive and generous when he said, we're inviting Nick Castle to come back and do a little work. Do you have a problem with that? Because you're the Michael Myers now. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding? What an honor it would be, first of all, to meet the guy, but secondly, to work with him. How good does that get? So we started work. And I can't remember if it was the second or third week that Nick came in and did kind of a cameo. He did a couple of scenes, and I'm in the scenes with him, which is really beautiful. He and I were hoping that would happen because he even said, this is the passing of the torch. We met with foreign journalists on the set, and Nick was so super gracious and just saying, look, I've come in to do a cameo. Jim is our Michael Myers now. The crazy thing about Nick is that he is such a giant talent, not only what he created instinctively and intuitively with Michael Myers, but look at his body of work. The man is just a genius, and he's the kindest, most generous, neatest guy you'll ever meet. I have a friend and a brother for life in Nick. So through the filming, I'm in every scene. I was there almost every day, long days, and it was an extremely physical role. The script is different than previous incarnations, and it would be with guys like Danny McBride and David and Jeff, but these guys are brilliant writers. And then you've got Blumhouse and their whole perspective. Look at what they just did, winning an Academy Award for Get Out. I mean, come on. And Ryan Turek, who is one of the guys who was instrumental in putting this all together, and the representative for Blumhouse on the set, is just a prince of a man. And he's so into horror. His knowledge is just so deep. And I have to say this, and this was a real big thing for me, and a first in my life. I took what John Carpenter and Nick had created, but I co-created this character with Christopher Nelson. Christopher's work with the mask and the prosthetics, and his deep knowledge of the Halloween tradition and the characters and how they move, not only creating the mask that when I put it on, something special happens, but he was with me every single shot. He was the guy that put the mask on and took it off, and he would drop little pearls, like little whispers or reminders. He wasn't directing me, but his knowledge was so deep. Sometimes we'd do a take, and then all of a sudden, I'd get 5 or 6 notes from 5 or 6 different people, and that's a lot to remember. Okay, when you get to the bottom of the stairs, I need you to move 1 inch to the left. But Chris would always bring me right back really deep into like, okay, this is what it's all about. So I feel like I co-created this moment with Christopher Nelson, who is just a giant of talent and one of the finest human beings you'll ever meet. And then a little further on in the article, Halloween Daily News says this. It sounds great. I want to go back just a little bit to working with Nick. When you say you did scenes together, I'm assuming you mean it will be intercut with the two of you, like not 2 Michaels in the same scene, right? That's correct. The thing is, I didn't look at any press while I was working. I just wanted to stay focused. But I started reading this thing about me being his stunt double. I mean, Nick is 5'10", 170 pounds, and I'm 6'3", 210 pounds. So, I think that'd be a really difficult thing to pull off. Nick was very gracious. Of course, we want the fans to understand that he's back, and I'm not much of a self-promoter at all. I never have been. But the other side of that is, Nick said, look man, you're doing the work. You take credit for what you do. The fans are going to love you, and the fans are awesome. And the great news is that I'll get to start traveling with Nick to these conventions and stuff. The awesome part of that for me is I really love people, and the people that I've met so far, the fans that did manage to get onto the set, and there were very few because it was a closed set, to see their reaction when they're meeting Nick and when they're meeting me, like the new Michael Myers, to see the joy that they had in their eyes, it was like, oh my gosh, I get to be one of those guys who brings joy to these people who have been fans for years. How good does that get? So, folks, there you have it. Believe it or not, that is a snippet from the very lengthy and in-depth interview with James Jude Courtney over at HalloweenDailyNews.com. I highly recommend you guys go over and check it out. It's absolutely fantastic. I think the work that the fine folks over at Halloween Daily News are doing is tremendous. These interviews are not just sound bites; they are in-depth interviews with these people, and it's just great. They are great reads, and this, of course, gives us finally some context, some objective context to the relationship that Nick Castle and James Jude Courtney have in relation to the character of Michael Myers and the new Halloween film coming out this October 2018. And this makes sense. Now, one of the things that I find really interesting in this article, I mean, there's a lot of things I find really interesting, but one of those things is James Jude Courtney's size. He's 6'3", 210 pounds. Now, maybe a lot of you guys already knew of his size prior to this article. I did not, but even if you did know, about how big he was, I think we were all sort of under the impression, and rightly so because of his, body of work as a stunt performer, that he was going to be, doing all of the stunts in this new movie, and he wasn't necessarily taking on the active role from scene to scene within the narrative of Michael Myers. I think we were all under the impression that that was going to be Nick Castle. That's how it was marketed at the end of December, and that's how it's, continued to be marketed up until this point. So I think a lot of you guys might feel gypped. A lot of you guys might feel like, oh, hang on a sec here. Then don't fucking say that. Just say that Nick Castle's coming back to do, a cameo or, a couple of scenes, and we will understand that it is, a passing of the torch. We will understand that it's a cool kind of little thing to do. We're all grown adults here. We don't have to be coddled and peppered with, rainbows and candy. We can take it if, if you simply say that James Jude Courtney is going to be Michael Myers from the very beginning and that Nick Castle's just coming in to do, a couple of scenes, but that's not how it was marketed. That's not how, the information was released, and that's not how it was presented. So a lot of you guys might feel gypped and sort of kind of like, well, that fucking sucks. Like, what the hell? At the same time, a lot of you guys might feel relieved at this information and news that it isn't Nick Castle taking on the scene-by-scene presentation of The Shape. But what I find interesting, though, is that they have made a conscious creative choice to go with a man who is 6'3", 210 pounds. Now, this is a conscious creative choice because these casting decisions and choices are not just pulled out of their asses. I mean, this was the envision that David Gordon Green and Danny McBride had when they were writing this new Halloween film. They wanted somebody of that sort of size and stature. But what's interesting is that he will go down as one of the biggest Michael Myers we've ever had. And it makes me wonder how they're going to shoot those scenes. Because to the hardcore Halloween fan, it's going to be very apparent that this Michael Myers is 6'3", 210 pounds when you put him in a room next to somebody who's not. And if he's in the same room with Laurie Strode, which he definitely will be at some point, if he's going to be towering over the character of Laurie Strode, in terms of continuity, that might be a bit weird, right? I mean, did Michael Myers gain 5 inches over the last, 40 years? And of course, I'm talking about his height, folks. Get your mind out of the fucking gutter. So, it's interesting. There are certain ways they can get around that in terms of the angles they choose, the lighting they choose, a bit of the fancy editing they decide to do. They can certainly get around that. But I think when you cast somebody who's 6'3", 210 pounds, you are casting him primarily because he is 6'3", 210 pounds. And, you want to utilize his size as part of the character, which I find interesting because there are a plethora of stunt performers out there who could have taken on this role who are 6 feet, 5'11", 5'10". They could have done that. This is a carefully calculated creative choice, which I find interesting and not necessarily one that I would have done. I am very sort of really picky when it comes to being authentic in terms of continuity, especially if I'm doing something that is, an immediate sequel to the original. I don't want somebody who's 6'3", 6'4" in boots, potentially, right? He's 6'3", but he could be 6'4" in boots. It's kind of like, well, wait a minute here. I mean, this is like, he's only 3 inches or, 4 inches away from Tyler Mane. I mean, this is like, what are we doing here, right? 4 inches is a lot. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that it's interesting. Now, another thing I want to mention is do not misinterpret the part of the article where James Jude Courtney talks about, having the masks made from a mold from his face. I read that as, they want to do that so the mask fits like a glove, but the actual face of the mask will hopefully look like Michael Myers from Halloween 1978. I did not get the impression that they are going to utilize his face as the new face of the Michael Myers mask. That wasn't the impression that I'm getting. And if he does mean that, and if they are doing that, I think that is a huge mistake absolutely unequivocally. But I don't think that's what he meant. I think that, they need to sort of take a mold of his face so the masks they do make fit like gloves, right? Perfectly on his face. But the actual artwork of the face itself will be very reminiscent of the Shatner mask from 1978. Now, I know a lot of people on set were saying, oh, it looks like the Michael Myers mask, some of the fans that happened to see it from, a distance or, all that kind of shit. But like I've said 1,000 times, what is somebody's Halloween 1978 Michael Myers the Shape mask to one is not the same kind of mask to another. I have seen a plethora of masks over the years where people have said, this is the holy grail of my mask collection. This is the hero mask from, look at this. And I look at it and I'm thinking, I don't know what the fuck you see, buddy. I'm so glad that you see that because I don't see it at all. Like 100%, not even close. So, when I hear that people have been saying, oh yes, it's the closest, oh my God, it's amazing, I take that with a grain of salt, okay? Because I know better. So I think you should too. However, I am hoping that they get as close to the Shatner mask as possible without having to pay any sort of, money to Shatner. Because I still don't think they can do that. I don't think they can make an exact absolute 100% replica of the original 1978 mask without having to pay Shatner. I stand to be corrected. Comment below and let me know if, all of a sudden they can, but I don't think they can. So I am hoping that they get as close as possible without having to pay any sort of fees. But what the mask will look like, I don't know, guys. I don't know, but hopefully they know the mask is so important that it can make or break this movie. It really can. So hopefully they understand and know that. So folks, it looks like that Nick Castle is just going to have a few scenes as Michael Myers in this movie. And this is a passing of the torch. Now, he'll be in some scenes and here and there, but the vast majority of the movie, one could even say maybe even 95 to 98% of the movie, it's going to be James Jude Courtney. He is your new Michael Myers. So I sort of equate it to Peter Mayhew and Chewie from the Star Wars films, right? He came back to play Chewie in The Force Awakens, but now, obviously, he had a physical disability where he could not walk very well, and certainly he could not do a lot of the physical things that they needed the character of Chewie to do. And you only saw Peter Mayhew as Chewie when he was sitting in the Millennium Falcon with Han and Rey and Finn. That was Peter Mayhew. But when we get to Starkiller Base or anywhere else in the film, when Chewie is actually walking or running, that is not Peter Mayhew. That is the new actor who has donned that costume. So, when you look at the overall film and the percentage of Chewie that was not Peter Mayhew, it might work out to about the same of what we can expect with Nick Castle and James Jude Courtney in this new film. But I think it's very clear that this new incarnation of Michael Myers 40 years later is going to be quite a physical one, at least enough of a physical one that Nick Castle could not play him in most of the scenes, which is interesting. When I think of Michael Myers being physical, I think, well, what's going to happen? He's going to fall down, a set of stairs. He's going to punch through, a door or a wall. He's going to fall off a balcony. What do they mean by it's more physical? Certainly I hope he's not running and, leaping across cars and, riding horses and tauntauns and, all that kind of shit. One would think just common sense says, well, it's, more physical because there's more stunt work. So, and we knew that it was going to be more physical from the very beginning anyway. That's not new information. We already knew that, which is why we thought, okay, well, James Jude Courtney is doing the physical shit and Nick Castle's doing all the rest. But apparently that's not what's happening. So that sort of coincides with what I said just a couple of days ago in the video that I uploaded about, is this going to be the last Halloween film? Where I said that, there was no reason to get Nick Castle back. It's not like they had to have him back because there was anything proprietary about what he did. It certainly can be replicated with somebody who understands the character, but I said this is sort of like a getting the band back together again, right? Why not, right? It'll be fun because if they do make another Halloween, okay, I'm hoping they don't, but if they do, John Carpenter's not going to be involved. Jamie Lee Curtis is not going to be involved. Nick Castle is not going to be involved. This is just more proof for me that this is at least that trio right there. It's the swan song. right? This is their farewell tour. This is the last time that we are going to see this trio attached to any kind of Halloween film in terms of actually being involved creatively in front of the camera. And that's it. And I think this is just more sort of proof of that. Now, one last thing I want to talk about is a little snippet from later on in the article where James Jude Courtney had this to say about John Carpenter. John was there for a few days, enough to be around and see things and meet people. I don't know this, but my take was he didn't want to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room. He wanted to come in, give everybody his blessing, shake some hands, look in some people's eyes, have a few laughs, and move on. He was letting David and the Roughhouse/Blumhouse crew do what they do, which is what a great filmmaker would do. When you bring in talented people like that, you've got to let them run. So this kind of coincides with exactly what I've been saying for a long time about John Carpenter's role as an executive producer in this new Halloween film. Look, about 4 or 5 months ago, I uploaded a video where I talked about what, an executive producer's role is and what that means for John Carpenter on this new Halloween film. And I did that because I wanted to calm everybody down who was thinking that just because he's attached as an executive producer, that somehow automatically means he has huge creative input and sway in the day-to-day activities of the actual narrative and things going on, and that this is going to be the most incredible Halloween movie since sliced bread. And I'm not saying it's not going to be, it could very well be, but how much of that has to do with John Carpenter and how much of that has to do with David Gordon Green and Danny McBride are two different questions, okay? An executive producer's role in major motion pictures varies so vastly on the spectrum, and I talked about this in a number of my videos over the last few months. You can be heavily involved in the creative aspect and the day-to-day, or you can be sitting on your ass collecting a check, doing literally nothing and just offering your name because it carries weight. And by and large, at the end of the day, I think that's what John Carpenter has done here from a creative standpoint. I'm not saying that he's not, he hasn't offered his thoughts, he hasn't offered some insight, he hasn't approved the script, and I do know that Jason Blum and David Gordon Green and Danny McBride have said in the past that they don't make any huge, big creative decisions without John Carpenter's, approval, which might be a bit of a hyperbole. I mean, that sounds really good from a marketing standpoint as well. But at the end of the day, like I've said many times, you have to remember that the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, doesn't recognize creative consultant as an official credit. So I've always believed, because of John Carpenter sort of, where he is in his life and how he's not really making movies and he doesn't really give a fuck about anything anymore. Now, again, I'm not saying he hasn't done executive producer things and that he's not an official executive producer. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that they want to use his name in all of the marketing and promotional material, and they can't do that if he's just a creative consultant. Because you can bet your ass his name's going to be on everything, every teaser poster and teaser trailer and, official trailer and movie spot and promo spots and you name it, his name's going to be there because he's the granddaddy of Halloween. Executive producer John Carpenter. John Carpenter presents, right? Oh my God. And the average moviegoer might think, oh my God, John Carpenter has had a huge hand in how this movie's going to turn out. And that's not necessarily the case. And what James Jude Courtney said here is like, yeah, he was there checking in, shaking hands, kissing babies and all that kind of shit. But at the end of the day, he wants this to be David Gordon Green's movie. At the end of the day, he wants this to be Danny McBride's movie. At the end of the day, he's there to offer some insight, if they need him. But at the end of the day, this is their movie. Okay. And I think it's very important that we understand that. Now, where John Carpenter will have some major creative input is in the music. If he's still planning on doing that, we haven't heard really, anything more about it, but I'm more looking forward to how he puts his stamp on the music. But again, at the same time, he's also going to be working, I believe, with his son Cody as well. So it's not just going to be John Carpenter. I believe his son is going to have a, heavy hand in that creative process as well. So, we have to keep things in perspective there. Anyways, folks, my name's Dave McRae. Comment below and let me know your thoughts. What do you think of this? Really interesting stuff, right? I want to know. Are you excited about this? Are you a little worried that James Jude Courtney is 6'3", 210 pounds, and Michael Myers in the original Halloween was a 5'10" guy? What's going on here? Are you a little worried about, the mask? You know, are you concerned about the mask? Is there something, you know, that you're concerned about with the way the mask might look, right? Comment below and let me know. I want to know it all. If you want to follow me on Facebook, you can at facebook.com/manythingsdavemcrae. McRae is MCRAE. Facebook.com/manythingsdavemcrae. That's where you can follow me. In the meantime and in between time, when I am not posting here, I post there. Don't forget, this Friday night, March 30th, 2018, from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be doing a live AMA, Ask Me Anything, or Q&A, depending on how you want to look at it, right here on this right here on this YouTube channel. So tune in then this Friday night, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In the meantime and in between time, comment below and let me know what you think about this news and the perspective we finally have on Nick Castle and James Jude Courtney's relationship and role, and Michael Myers' role to this new Halloween film. I want to know. I will talk to you guys soon. Cheers.